today we're going to be making some icons in Illustrator. This is for my purposes. I figured I would teach you guys how to do a little bit of stuff in Illustrator. I did these icons for a Pokemon print that I'm working on for Fan Expo in case I actually do get a table. So what you'll want to do is once you get Illustrator, you'll open up the program. If you're new to the program, bear with me. When you look at all the functions in the program, it might be very intimidating. It is not that bad. For this project, I will show you what tools you'll be using and how to create the item at large. So when you open Illustrator, you'll get a box, a stage is what we call it, and there'll be tools on the left hand side and boxes on the right hand side. It might look different from mine, simply because I already have mine preset for graphic design purposes. But so we're gonna start a new project. So when you go to File, New, you will see that there are letter size already there. A4 is already there. They may have a web window already there. These are preset stages for designing. And for my purpose, I am not, like at the top it says recent save, mobile, web, print, film, video, art, and illustration. So when I started as a graphic designer, it never had any of this, but since graphic design has become such a wide and broad range of what we're expected to do, they've expanded that within the Creative Cloud app. I don't know if they did this for graphic designers specifically, or if they did this because of it being used by other people outside of the design industry, maybe people who do like production for film and video or web designers or whatnot. But I know with a lot of the job postings now, they ask you to do pretty much everything. And it has changed so much over the years. So with that being said, they have different templates for different things. For this project, I'm going to be doing print. Sometimes I've worked in web, I've worked in the mobile one as well, but you have to know what you're doing your project for in order to create the stage for your project. So make sure you know whether you're doing it for a mobile app or web or print, film, video, art, illustration, etc. So for mine, I'm doing it for print. And once I click print, it will go automatically to letter. I like to work in inches. I do not like to work in points. So I want to do an 8.5 by 11 landscape. And on the right hand side, you'll see all the settings. So it has CMYK, high, 300 DPI. 300 DPI is for print, so that is what you would want to do. And yeah, so you can create a bleed too if you are bleeding off the page for print, but I would leave it for now. For this project, we don't need that. So then you would click create and it will create a new stage exactly like the one that I showed just now. You will notice that there are no rulers. I like to work with rulers, so you would click Command R. If you're on Mac, if you're on Windows, you would do Control R. And this will bring up the rulers. And again, if you right click on the rulers, you can change the measurements or the metrics, whichever one you want to use. The other thing I want to note in this program for tools that we are using is the selection tool, or what I like to call move tool. I don't know if they had renamed it at some point, but I like to call it the move tool. You'll be using the direct selection tool, the pen tool, the curvature tool, but I usually use a shortcut to do that. The rectangle or shape tool basically has a bunch of shapes. If you right click on it, it'll show you how many kinds of shapes it has. And you'll be using the rotation tool, but again, you can do this without having to click on the rotation tool. And you will be using the shape builder tool, which I'll explain what this does later. And you'll be using the eyedropper tool. So some things you do want to make note of on this side, if you have it, are the layers here. the two icons with the stacks. You'll want to make note of the swatches, the colors. This box here is for stroke. So that's the stroke of an object, and this is the fill of an object. So you got to make sure which one is selected when you're doing your color. You want to make sure you have the palette tool here, the color tool. This is in CMYK because we checked print, so print is normally in CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. You can, again, change colors with the slider, and we will be working with that as well. You'll also be working with the stroke panel. They have different things: weight of a stroke, the end cap of a stroke, the corner of a stroke, the align of a stroke, the dash line, which is basically a dashed line. You can fix the gap and see how big or wide you want the gap to be. And then you'll be working with the align tool and the transform tool. The align tool basically aligns two objects together, left, right, center. This one aligns everything evenly, horizontally, and this one aligns everything vertically. And Adobe does a good job of sort of labeling what everything does, so you can make reference to it by hovering over the icons. If you do not have these tools on the right hand side that I have listed, including the brush tool as well, you can get these tools by going to Window, and you'll see all of them listed under Window. So again, align, right, color, brushes. You just want to click on that and drag it into your toolbar over here, and you just want it to be that way. Your toolbar might show up like this when you open. It's basically a larger version of the tools on this side. So with that being said, let's get started with the project, and I will try to explain as best I can and as slow as I can for how to create these icons. So we're going to select the pen tool and create the lightning bolt icon first. What you want to do is put down one anchor point by clicking with the pen tool. Drag your pen across on an angle, put another anchor point down, and by anchor point I mean these little blue squares that you're seeing. And then move across, and to create a straight line across, just hold down Shift on your keyboard and then click, and then let go of the Shift. And then you can do the same thing again, and then hold down Shift, and then the same thing again. You go across and then straight, across and then straight. I want to close the object, so I'm just gonna, here when you see the anchor points joined together, there'll be a circle, which means that the object will be closed. So I just closed it, but I don't really want it to be a shape. I want it to just be a line for now. So I'm going to delete this anchor point over here by using this tool, the direct selection tool, and clicking on it, then deleting. And then I want to select everything, so I would use the select tool, or move tool as I like to call it, because it moves everything at once, as opposed to the direct selection tool, which only moves, allows you to move certain anchor points. You could just drag and drop and then move everything with the deselection tool, but again, this is an easier way to do it, where you move it with your move tool. But I want to take the line and copy paste it, so I will select everything with the selection tool, and then use Command C, Command V. Again, that's for Mac. If you're using a PC, it's Control C, Control V. This is copy pasting. If you don't want to use shortcuts, which most people want to use shortcuts, but if you want to find it in the menu to copy paste, you would select it and then go to edit, copy, and then paste. But these are the keyboard shortcuts that you want to use. So now that the lightning bolt is there, you can see that it's already starting to look like one. You're going to take the direct selection tool and you're going to move this over to the tip of the other line. And you're going to select both of them. So what you can do to select both of them is take your arrow, hold down the button, and drag it across so that the box selects those two anchor points. And then you'll select Command J or Control J. And what that does is it joins the two anchor points together so that it closes the shape at the bottom. Now I want to close the shape at the top too because this is open. So say if I were to put a color into this, it would not have a line across, which I really want this to be closed. So I will align these two anchor points by selecting them with the deselection tool. And the way you know it's selected is you can see it's full, there's a full blue filling in the little square. That's how I know that these two are the only ones that are selected and these ones are not selected. So we're going to do Command J again. And with the Command J, obviously you can see now that there's a line joining it together. So if I fill this now, you'll see the outline and the whole object is complete. But these two anchor points aren't aligned, so I want to align them. So I'll go to the right hand side and go to the Align panel and align it vertically aligned to the top, only these two anchor points. So now that it's aligned, it means that it's aligned with each other, aligned to this anchor point is aligned to this anchor point. So that looks a little bit more like a lightning bolt. The tip is a little bit off, so I'm going to move this over slightly. And the other thing you want to note, I'm not going to use it for the lightning bolt, but this circle will appear whenever you select the deselection tool and you're selecting all of the anchor points. The reason that these circles show up is because when you have an anchor point selected and you touch this circle, it curves the anchor points that are sharp, it curves them, and it creates an additional anchor point. For this purpose, we don't want to do that, but I just want to show you that you can also curve just one anchor point to make sort of a stylistic look if you were going for that. And I will be using that with the other shapes, but for now, this is the shape that we have created. So the first one is created and it looks great, but it doesn't have a fill. These points are a little too angular. I'm not loving that. So we're gonna go to the stroke panel on the right hand side. Make sure if you don't have the stroke panel, go to Windows and then go to Stroke to get the panel. And while we're in this panel, we're gonna change the thickness of this stroke because it, to me, looks too thin, kind of like a pencil. So I'm gonna go to weight, and this is the weight of the stroke. I am going to select maybe 5, and that looks a little bit better. And then I'm going to cap the angles. What I mean is this part here, this anchor point right here, it's sharp. So I don't want it to be that sharp, but I also don't want it to add additional anchor points to my shape. To do a slight curvature, you can round off the caps. So I'm going to select everything and round off the caps and the corners. And now everything is rounded. So if you round off the cap, if it's a line, it'll round off the two ends of the line. If it's a shape, you round off the corners and it'll round off the corners like it just did. You can also do this, which basically creates like a cut on the angle, or you can go back to the original. And that's what this weight panel, stroke panel allows you to do. The aligned stroke, with the aligned stroke, you can make the stroke go inward. You can make the stroke be in the center of the blue line, or you can make the stroke go on the outside of the blue line. So I'm gonna leave it on the outside just to make the lightning bolt a bit thicker. And when you want to fill the object, which we do, right now it's filled with white. So I can see that the fill is white, the stroke is black on the swatch panel. Additionally, you can go to this panel as well and double click to get a color swatch or color mode. But I like using the swatch panel because it's easier. So we're gonna fill that with black. And I normally work in black or magenta. I don't know why I do that. I think it's just so that I can see the shape, and it's in a very like crude color so that I know where things are and what it looks like, and then I put it to the color that it's supposed to be afterward. Yeah, so that's the first object, and it's looking good. The second object now we want to create is the bubble. Now the bubble's really easy. You go to the ellipse tool, you hold down Shift, and with your mouse you drag it across to the size that you like, and it's a circle, the perfect circle. If you were to do this without pressing Shift, this is what would happen. You drag it around and it creates that like weird compressed ellipse. That's good if you want to do like any kind of face or something, but I'm doing a bubble, so I want it to be a perfect circle. So you hold down Shift for that. Then within that circle, I want two other circles inside of it. Now, because it's black and filled, I can't see, so I'm gonna take the fill area and I'm gonna use the none so that I can see inside. But you got to make sure that you're doing none to the fill area. And then you're going to do the same thing with this, the two circles. You don't want it to be filled. And now I'm like, okay, well, these two circles look a little bit big, and I'm not loving that the stroke is on the outside, so I'm going to put it in the middle. And I'm going to take my move tool here and select the two and hold down Shift and scale it to be a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to move the circle up a bit because I think that it should be there. And I'm going to change the thickness of the stroke because I think that's too thick. So here. And that's how we created the bubble. The bubble is super easy. It's probably the easiest shape out of all of them to create. The hardest one I would think is the flame. And we'll get to that in a minute. So we're just going to leave that the way it is for now. There are additional things that we can do to it after, but for now this is what we're going to do. So the next one is the leaf. There are two ways to do the leaf. You can use the shape builder tool to build the leaf, or you can use the pen tool and draw out half a leaf, copy paste it and flip it, and then join it together. Both are feasible. I'm only doing the shape tool one to show you what the shape tool does. So I'm going to hold down Shift and create another circle. I'm going to take the eyedropper tool because I'm not loving the stroke on this. So you'll see what the eyedropper tool does. With this circle selected, click the eyedropper tool, go over here, and sample that. When you sample that, it means that it's taking the style of the object that you sample and applying it to the object that you have selected. So that is what that tool does. And then we're gonna take this and maybe squish it a little bit, just a touch. Then I'm gonna go back, right click the shape tool over here, this ellipse tool over here, and go to the rectangular tool. And I'm going to create a rectangle that's about the same width of the ellipse here. So we're just going to move that over and then pull it down a bit. Now, if you want things to snap into place, I don't usually like to use it because sometimes it'll snap to a place that I don't really want to snap it to. You can go to View and you can do Smart Guides. So Smart Guides, I'll give you a quick review of what that does. So that's under View again and Smart Guides. Once you go there, you'll see that it's naming things. It has a pink path there. And if I were to move one anchor point, it would snap to the other shape. This is good for when you are creating things that are two objects and you want them to the anchor points to sort of snap into place. It's not good if you're wanting to do something like, say, move this over and it's aligning to things on the other side and you don't want it to do that. You just want to be able to put it here and not have it snap to like here. So for this purpose right now, having the anchor point snap to the circle, I think is a good way to use the smart guides. But I'm going to turn it off now. And since we're making a leaf, I know that I want a point in the middle. So I'm going to put that here, right in the middle. And I'm going to delete the left top anchor point, which now leaves an opening for the shape. So what do we do with an opening? We close it. So we select the two anchor points and then do Command J or Control J if you're on Windows. Do the same thing with the other side. Delete that anchor point, select it and then delete it, and then do Command J or Control J. So now this kind of looks a little weird. This looks like a dunce cap on a person or something, but this is what the shape tool does. So this here is two shapes. If you select the shape builder tool, you'll see that it looks like the move or whatever this is called now, selection tool, and it has a plus sign, and if I hold down Option, it has a minus sign. This tool is very handy for when you want to merge objects. 2 objects, 3 objects, 4 objects, however many objects you want to merge together. So if you drag your mouse, you click and you drag all the way down with this tool with the plus sign, it'll now make one shape. But I don't want these two sides, so I'm going to click Option and make sure that the little dotted grid is on that object and click it, and it'll subtract those two sides. So now I have sort of a shape that I want for a leaf, but I have too many anchor points. So I'm going to take my pen tool, go to the anchor point and hover over it, and it'll have a minus sign, and it'll minus it from the shape, which is what I do when I want less anchor points. So if the pen tool has a star sign next to it, it means that it's going to create an anchor point that is not going to be on the shape. It'll be a separate anchor point or entity on its own. That's not what you want. You want it to be plus or minus for this particular purpose. So that's the zoom tool. So right here, I don't normally use it, but I have to look unless I'm looking closer to the object. So I'm moving the anchor point to see that there are access pieces within this shape. So I'm going to move this over, and I'm seeing that there's some that I didn't subtract. So I'm just going to delete that. And then I'm going to remove some anchor points from here because I don't want all of them. So let me just zoom into there with the zoom tool. And let me take the pen tool and subtract that. So to go back to your regular view after you've used the little the glass tool, the zoom tool, you will want to press Command 0 or Control 0 to go back to the 100% or 120% layout to see the whole screen again. So while you're hovered over one of the anchor points, you can press Alt and it'll turn into the curved pen tool. And that will create 2 handles on the side of the pen tool. So you only need to hover over and create this icon here for your mouse. Hover over the anchor and then let go of the Alt Option tool. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click Alt and curve it. Then if you want the curve to be straight, you can hold Shift after you've let go of Alt or Option. And then it turns into a perfect curve. So with 2 handles. And by handles, I mean these little dots on the 2 sides. So I'm going to do the same thing with this side where I put the pen tool, I select option, I drag it, I put shift down, and now it's sort of even. So it has 2 angles here. And then I'm going to go back to my move tool. And I'm like, okay, well, the bottom looks a little bit flat. So I'm going to move that down a little to make it more of a teardrop looking shape. Then I'm like, oh, okay, well, the leaf is a little big, so I'm going to take the selection tool and I'm going to shrink it down. Shrink it down. But I want it to be a bit fatter, so I'm just going to take my selection tool and move the anchor point over to make it a bit fatter as well. And again, to scale things down properly where it doesn't like distort, you use the selection tool and you hold down shift. Shift is to scale things correctly, to make a perfect circle. It does a lot of stuff in the program when you do that key command. Now it needs a stem, so I'm just going to take the pen tool and create a stroke. And again, with the stroke, you can see that it has the curve because the cap is on a round cap here in the stroke panel. And now I want to align the two so that it's centered. So I go to align and then I click horizontal align to center. And that's the leaf. So let's just shrink it down so it's roughly the same size. And I want to rotate it. So with the rotation, you don't have to use the rotate tool. You can use the selection tool and wait on one of the anchor points on the side and wait for the icon to change to this little 2 arrow and half arc. And that means that you can do this. You can rotate it however you like. If you want to rotate it 90 degree, perfect 90 degree, perfect 180 degree, hold down shift and it'll snap to the axis of obviously, 90 degree, 180 degree, 360, etc. So I want to do mine at a 45 degree angle exact. So I hold down shift and I wait for the icon and I move it around. Remember that you have to hold down shift and you have to make sure everything is selected and you have to make sure that this little icon shows up on the anchor point. So there's the leaf. If you don't want to do 180, 90, etc., you can just, again, as I said, don't hold down shift and you can rotate it however you like. So that's the leaf. And again, to scale that icon there with the line and the dash, that is to scale up or down to make it big or small. So for the fire now. Fire's a little bit more tricky. You're going to be using every single tool that I have spoken of for the fire. You're going to want to go and do the ellipse tool and make sort of an ellipse. So you won't be holding down shift. You don't want to make it a circle. You want to make it sort of an ellipse looking thing. Take the pen tool and create a separate shape. So obviously you're seeing a little star on the right hand side. That means that it is not going to add an anchor point to this shape. It's just going to create a separate shape. And then you're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And wait until you reach the end to complete the shape. So the circle on the bottom right of the icon, the pen tool icon, closes the shape up. And I want these 2 anchor points to be aligned, so I go to the aligned panel here and just either click vertical top or vertical bottom, doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to put my smart guides back on for a little bit, which is right here, or Command U. And I'm just going to extend these anchor points to join onto the ellipse. Now, this top piece here that I created is the flames, but I want them to be curved. I want the flames to curve and sort of move how I want them to move. So I'm going to start adding in some anchor points on both sides of each point. So let me do that. Okay, so that's fine. But then at the same time, these anchor points are just straight up anchor points. They're not curved. They don't have handles. I can't do anything with them. So I'm going to do what I did with the leaf, where I hold down Option or Alt and I drag it so that it's a curve and has two handles. You take your direct selection tool and you make sure that you have that anchor point selected, and you can drag it as far as you want and whatnot, and it'll be curved. So I want a slight curve, but I want it to curve smoothly. So I'm just going to use the handles to adjust this curve. And I'm going to do the same thing to every single point on this flame. That's why I said the flame's a little bit harder to do. So again, create the handles and the curve. You can pull that one in and then pull the handles out, or however you like. I think my handles are too big, so I'm just gonna move it over to the side. And then again, with everything else, you're gonna do the same thing. And then you can just move them however you like. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm just gonna move it over to the side. That one curved a bit. If ever you see it doing this, it means that the handles are not on the right side. So you just wanna switch it over. And same thing. See this, it's curving the wrong way. So just straighten that out. Move this up a little. And then this one, I want it to curve in a little bit. So we're just gonna maybe I'll make the flame go this way instead. So now that the flame looks kind of cool, I'm gonna shrink it down a little bit. And I feel like the ellipse is not big enough for the base now. So I'm gonna move this out a little bit more. And I'm gonna take the other shape and I'm gonna move the anchor point out to join to the ellipse. So now that this is how I like it, I think it looks pretty decent. I'm gonna select all of both objects. I'm going to use the shape builder tool again and make sure that it's on the plus sign, and I'm going to drag it all the way down, and now it is one object. So I'm seeing now that there's a little bit of a divot here, and the way to fix that is to select those anchor points and do the same thing where you had the curve, or you can remove it completely and manipulate the handles in order to create a smoother curve. Keep in mind that the less anchor points you have on an object, the more smooth the curve will be on an object. I know a lot of people tend to make that error where they put like a ton of anchor points and then it doesn't, it's not perfectly smooth, especially on a logo. On a logo, you want to make sure that everything is smoothened out properly, because if you don't do that, you end up with like weird like divots like you saw in this one, because it had too many anchor points and ended up having divots, and you don't really see that unless you really zoom into the logo or the item. So with flames, I'm like, there should be something inside of it, because I feel like with the flame icon, usually there's a tiny little flame inside of a flame. So I Command-C, Command-V to create another version of this, and then I just shrink it down and move it to the bottom on top of the item. And then I don't like how thick the stroke is, so I'll change the stroke to maybe a 4 or a 3. And that is how you build the icons. I would take these two and group them together, make sure you have everything selected, and Command G and select and Command G, and this is one piece. So yeah, that's how you create these ones. But to create these ones is another process. So let's create these to make them filled. And then let's try and do maybe one of these to show you what to do. So I want to fill these objects. Let me ungroup them. And then go to swatches and fill it with black. Then the two circles inside, make sure you have them selected. You want to do them in white. Same thing with this. You want to ungroup it and then put black inside. And with the stem, I created another like stroke inside of it, sort of aligned to that stroke. So I did a white color on the stroke, and I just moved it to be aligned with that so that it's there. Yeah. See, I'm trying to align it and it's snapping, so I'm just gonna turn off the smart guides so that I can free ball it without having to have it snap in like weird places. Same thing with this. You want to fill it with black, ungroup it, make sure the inner one is white, and that's how the icons look here in the original document. So that's how we want to do it. If you want to create the circular icons, go to the ellipse tool, hold shift, and then drag your mouse so that you create a perfect circle. And then here is where you're going to use the color or swatch palette. So my color is yellow, so make sure that this little box here is on the fill, and then use the slider to create yellow. That's a little too harsh for me, so I'm going to do it at 50 on yellow, which is the Y here. Going to take the stroke away, I don't want that. And then I'm going to take this item, Command C, Command V to copy paste, and put that in the middle of the circle. Take the align tool and use horizontal align center, horizontal align vertical, and it'll align it with the two objects. So just make sure you have them both selected, and then horizontal align center, horizontal align vertical. So the object here, that's fine. But at the same time, it has a stroke, and I want the stroke to be included as one shape, not as a stroke and a fill. I want it to be one shape looking like this. The reason you do that is because the stroke with the minimal curve, you want that in your icon. And if you do it where you don't put a stroke at all, obviously there won't be this curve, and you'll have to create the curve manually with that little circle on the anchor point. So to create this as one shape, you would select the shape and then go to Object, and you would click Expand Appearance. This expands the stroke so that it is an object and not a stroke anymore. And to add in all of it, you just take the shape builder tool, and select all of it. Select all three lines. And now this is one shape. So right now there is no stroke here. You can see that. I'm sorry if that was a little fast. Let me do it again. Take the object, go to Object, Expand Appearance. This will create a stroke. This will make the stroke no longer a stroke. It'll make it now that it's an object. It's part of the fill. But these lines, you don't want them here, because it's like creating the stroke as an object, as a separate object. So then you want to merge it all together by using the shape builder tool, dragging it with the plus sign, and going all the way across. So now that you have two objects here, the circle and this one, there is a neat trick that you can do where you can subtract the lightning bolt from this circle by clicking both objects, selecting them both, and using the shape builder tool again, and just holding down Option or Alt to get the minus sign and subtracting it from the object. Keep in mind you can do this with the Pathfinder area as well. I didn't explain that one, but for this project you don't really need this one right now. I prefer using the Shape Builder tool for other projects that are like this. So say you want to create another circle that's sort of in the same size as this one. If you want to create another circle, so just hold down Shift and create another circle, but you want it to be the same size as this circle. Well, in the Transform tool, you can figure out what that size is. So the Transform tool has width and height, X and Y, and then there's a little grid with anchor points. The grid with anchor points are for the X and Y values. So the X value, obviously, if you click the top anchor point on this box, it means the top anchor point here, and the positioning of it is 0.8 by 3.5. So if I wanted to align something exactly, I would click the other object and then put in these coordinates, and it would go to the same spot. But that's not what we want to do. We want to create a shape that's the same size. So this shape is 2.9886. You want this one to be 2.9886, and you want it to scale correctly. So you would copy paste the width into the other object. So you would select the other object and then paste the width, and then it would scale with this link icon. It means it's going to scale exact, which means it'll be 2.9886 and 2.9886. If you break the link and you say, oh, I want this to be 3 inches, it's going to only create the width at 3 inches, but it's not going to change the height. So you want this to be linked to make sure that it sizes correctly. And then you will align it to the top and go back to the swatch panel or the color panel and change this to blue. So cyan. And I'll do 50 because again, 100 is way too, it's very strong. So if you want to create the other one, I'll do it really quickly for you. You copy paste this object and then ungroup it. Select all of the circles and then go to Object, Expand Appearance. And select the one object and go to your Shape Builder tool, and again add all these strokes in. And do the same thing with the tiny bubbles as well. Object, expand, fill and stroke. Yes, we want to expand that. And again, make sure you only have the white selected. Same thing here. But I don't really want the bubbles to show up. I don't really want the white. I kind of just want to subtract it. So I'm going to take the Shape Builder tool, hold down Option Alt, and subtract the two objects. So now when I put it over a color, you can see that the blue is coming through those two holes because I had subtracted it from the object. So we're just going to put little bubbles here and there. Medium. And then we're going to change the color in the swatch tool to white. And that's how you create these icons. It's not difficult. At least I don't think it's difficult. I'm hoping that you have followed along. You're going to do the same thing with these items that I did with these two items. The same rules apply. The only difference being that this stroke, when you expand it, it'll look the same as it does, but it'll be in a fill instead of a stroke. And then this one, you'll just want to subtract the white area. So you'll take the object, copy paste it, expand, make sure that you include the stroke with the Shape Builder tool on both objects, and then select the two, take the Shape Builder tool and subtract the middle area from the main area. So I'm going to show you, I don't really need to save this, but if you did want to save, you would go to File, Save As, then you choose a name, and then you choose where you want to file it and whatnot. You can file it as AI, PDF, etc. But I won't get into that. What I will show you is what I use this for specifically, just to show you like what what I did with it. So this is what I created with those icons. I'm gonna create probably some texture on it as well, but graphic design comes in handy for drawing and printing and etc. And the convention's coming up, and hopefully I get a table. If not, you know what? Maybe I'll sell it online. The background I might make like a gradient of some kind or a pattern of some kind. But that's basically how you use Illustrator to make simple icons for various things that you want to do. There are other things that Illustrator can do. This is probably the simplest thing. There's gradients that you can use. There's textures. There's tons of things you can do. But for this project, this is what we worked on. And now you have dipped your toe into the world of graphic design a little bit and Illustrator. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that you guys are having a great day. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you found this informative at all. And if so, then maybe I'll do some more tutorials in the other programs like Photoshop or InDesign. Keep in mind with Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, Illustrator is it's a vector program. And what I mean by that is that no matter how big you blow it up, it's never going to be blurry because it is a vector program. Photoshop is rasterized, so it relies on pixels per inch and dots per inch. If you do something at 4x4 at 300 dpi and you blow it up to 30 by 30 inches at, when it was originally 4x4 at 300 dpi, then if you blow it up, it's going to show up blurry. So like when you print it, if it's on a screen, it might be fine, should be fine. But basically each program has a different type of thing. You can rasterize things in Illustrator, but for most purposes like package design or logo design, Illustrator is your go-to for that. Photoshop would be your go-to for anything that is like poster related or creating and manipulating images and whatnot. And InDesign is more of a layout program if you're doing a magazine or a booklet or editorial or something like that. But for now, we did Illustrator, so congratulations if you made it this far.